We breathe out complaints like we breathe out carbon dioxide. It's part of the atmosphere we create for ourselves every single day without even realizing it. We call it venting, as if we're clearing the air, but I've started to wonder if we're actually just polluting it further. There's this idea floating around that if we stop for 21 days, our entire neurological wiring will just snap into a new shape. I decided to take the bait last month to see if I could actually survive 3 weeks without uttering a single word of dissatisfaction. It sounds like a spiritual retreat for the modern ego, doesn't it? A way to finally quiet that hungry, petty little monster that lives inside us all. I honestly thought it would make me a saint, or at least the kind of neighbor people don't instinctively try to avoid when they see me at the mailbox. On the very first day, I felt incredibly intentional, almost like I was walking on eggshells inside my own mind, afraid of my own tongue. I bit my lip when the morning coffee was lukewarm, and for a fleeting second, I felt a strange, smug sense of victory over my own comfort. I smiled through a 3-minute red light that felt like an eternity, watching the digital clock tick down while I held my breath in the silence. It felt like I was winning a game that nobody else in the world knew we were playing, that it felt surprisingly powerful and clean. But then I started to notice how much comfort we actually find in shared misery. It's the easiest, most accessible currency we have for social interaction. It's how we connect at the water cooler or in the crowded elevator when the air is thick with that heavy, awkward silence we all dread. Can you believe this weather is practically a secret handshake among strangers that says, I'm just as miserable and human as you are today. By day 3, I realized I was becoming very quiet, and not in the enlightened monk kind of way I had originally imagined for myself. It turns out that if you take away my ability to complain, I don't actually have that much left to say to the people I care about most. I was sitting at dinner with my family, just watching the words float by like leaves on a very fast, very noisy river of daily grievances. My friends were bonding over a particularly bad movie and a very slow waiter, and I just sat there, nodding like a statue in the corner. I felt like a ghost at my own dinner table, unable to participate in the one thing that seemed to be bringing everyone else closer together. I started to wonder if complaining is actually the invisible glue that holds our fragile social lives from simply falling apart into nothingness. If we stop complaining, do we stop being interesting to others? Do we just become these bland, smiling, hollow echoes of our former selves? I had to sit down in the quiet and really try to redefine what a complaint even was in the context of my own messy, complicated life. Is saying it's raining a complaint, or is it just a factual, objective weather report about the current state of the grey sky above us? I think it depends entirely on the weight of the sigh you put behind the words, that little exhale of disappointment we all use so often. The sigh is where the poison lives, I think. It's the low, vibrating sound of our expectations hitting the hard, cold wall of reality. By the end of the first week, I felt this strange, physical pressure building up right behind my eyes, like a headache that wouldn't quite land. It was like a massive dam holding back a river of petty observations and small, dead pieces of daily frustration that wanted to be heard. It's genuinely exhausting to be constantly positive, or even just to maintain a state of total, flat neutrality when things are going wrong. We're taught from a very young age that silence is golden, but in the middle of this challenge, it felt more like heavy, suffocating grey lead. It's heavy. It's dull. It pulls you down into the dark parts of your mind where the unspoken things live and breed without any light. I started to notice, with a terrifying kind of clarity, just how much every single person in my life was complaining about something or someone. It was like suddenly being the only sober person at a very loud, very messy house party where everyone is oversharing their deepest regrets. You see the loops people get stuck in, the same old tired stories they tell themselves about why they're unhappy and why it's someone else's fault. But then, I realized with a sharp jolt that I was just complaining about the complainers in the safety of my own head. Wasn't I? I was feeling the true spirit of the challenge while technically following the rules to the letter, which is probably the worst kind of failure. The challenge was supposed to change my life, to turn me into some kind of demon of discipline or a pillar of peace for the world to see. But instead, I just felt lonely. And if I'm being completely honest, I felt a little bit superior and very judgmental of everyone else. Is it really discipline if you're just screaming internally while your face remains perfectly still and calm for the sake of a 21-day rule? I missed the relief of a good, honest moan about the rising taxes or the way the neighbor always leaves their bins out for too long. There's a certain intimacy in hating the same things together, a bond that forms when you both agree that the world is a bit of a mess today. By the second week, this transformation I was supposed to be feeling started to feel more like a heavy, suffocating mask I couldn't take off. I was becoming a person who never disagreed with anything, a person who just let the world happen to them without any resistance at all. I was becoming invisible, a smooth surface with no sharp edges for anyone to catch on, no real personality left to speak of. I began to wonder if radical positivity is just another clever way we've found to avoid looking at the difficult truths right in front of us. Some things in this life are genuinely bad. Some things are unfair, and they probably deserve a loud, clear, and very public complaint. If we don't name the problem out loud, do we ever actually fix it? Or do we just learn to live with the slow rot of our own silence? Or do we just let it sit there, festering in the dark, while we smile politely into the endless, and carrying void that doesn't care about our joy? I think I was looking for a miracle in this 21-day mission, but I found a very uncomfortable mirror instead, and I didn't like the view. And the person staring back at me in that mirror looked a bit, well, they looked incredibly bored and hollow and strangely disconnected. If you're still listening to this, maybe you're sitting there right now, subconsciously calculating the weight of your own daily sighs and groans. Don't worry. I won't tell anyone if you need to let one out right now just to feel the pressure leave your chest for a few beautiful seconds. 21 days is a very long time to keep your mouth shut when the world keeps giving you perfectly good reasons to open it and shout. It's long enough to build a new habit, I suppose, but I had to ask myself if this was a habit that was actually worth keeping at all in the long run. I finished the challenge yesterday afternoon, and do you know what I did? I celebrated with a long, beautiful, and very detailed gripe. I complained about the price of the sandwich I bought for lunch. Then I complained about the way the paper bag felt against my fingers. It felt wonderful. It felt like finally putting on an old, familiar sweater that's a bit torn and frayed but fits your soul perfectly. Maybe we aren't meant to be perfectly silent or perfectly happy or perfectly disciplined all of the time, despite what the internet tells us. Maybe the toxin of complaining is actually the strange social fuel that keeps us connected and, more importantly, keeps us feeling human. I'm not saying we should drown ourselves in a sea of negativity, but a little splash now and then keeps the heart beating and the blood moving. A little splash of honesty keeps the conversation moving and lets the other person know that you're struggling just as much as they are. I'm still checking my words more than I used to, I think, but I'm finally letting the sighs back into the room where they belong. Life is messy and unpredictable, and sometimes the most honest thing you can do is just stand in the middle of it and say it's messy. We breathe out complaints like we breathe out carbon dioxide, and it's a cycle that we might actually need to survive in this loud world. Without that exhale, without that release of the small daily pressures, I think we'd all just eventually find a way to burst into pieces. The silence wasn't a breakthrough at all. It was just a long pause before the next breath, and I think I'm finally okay with that realization. Thank you for listening. I'll see you in the next episode.